Welcome to Metaphysical, Mississippi. Today we have our entrepreneurship panel, and we'll be discussing women in history that have appeared to have their life together and again paved the way. We've got Heidi, Natalie, Krista, Hadley, and of course myself, Emily. So sit back and enjoy, and we're glad you're here today. How y'all doing, everybody?
Right.
Morning.
Well, it being Women's History Month, I wanted to think of all the important female women that have their shit together.
Or not, but still made it work.
Yeah.
They.
I think I have another question I sent out to you guys to also share people who may be unknown but still impacted your life. And of course, mine is, maternal influences, of course. I'm going to want you each to share kind of who that historical person might have been that you felt was a role model in your life, maybe unknown, but impacted your life, but unknown to most other people. How you personally want to leave a legacy for those later. Does anybody have someone they'd like to share that they felt was influential in their lives?
I'll go. I picked Eudora Welty. I didn't want to be cliche and be like, oh, I'm gonna get, because she's iconic here. She's iconic everywhere, but she's especially revered here. But I've just been feeling her a lot lately. And I love whenever I've sort of dove more into her life, the way that some of the things about her life dovetail, just coincide with my life. She won the Pulitzer Prize for The Optimist's Daughter in 1973. I was 2 years old. I was here, and when she passed, it was July 23rd, 2001, exactly a month. Almost exactly a month after my middle daughter was born. So just knowing that, she's historical, but she's my lifetime.
Yes.
There were so many things about her works that I love. There's so many trailblazing things that she did, but she did it by doing her work and just being exceptional at it. Now, she did not highlight. She was a Southern writer, and one of the things that I really wanted to dive into was, let me make sure she's not problematic, because there are so many things that we learn about our heroes, and then later on we're like, she was able to highlight the differences in the ways that people live in the South, the separateness, without giving it an activist voice, which is, I think, why she maintained popularity during her lifetime.
Yeah.
But she was able to shine a light. Even the characters that were on the periphery, if she was, I can't think of the character's name right now, but anyway, there was a character that was just sort of like in the periphery, and it was a Black man, and she just pointed to how complex his life was. Like, you understand, he wasn't just like a prop that came in, played a role, and then he disappeared, and so even in those side characters, she was able to develop this complex existence. And I just really love the way that she subtly layered those things in so that you didn't miss it, but there was a message there. And even if you weren't ready to hear it, it was there. So during a time when people, she was born in 1909, it's, I feel like she was controversial without being controversial. That's what I really like.
Yes.
So that's just.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. I don't know much about Eudora Welty. I don't know anything really about her other than she has a library. That's so sorry, but
No.
that's all I know. But you are a writer, so that is so fitting.
Yeah, she's fascinating, and she's always fascinated me. I love going places where I knew that she frequented. There's is it George Street? Old Tavern. It's Old Tavern on George Street. Used to be a grocery store, and she would go there, and when she was a child, and I used to go sit and have lunch at their counter, and occasionally, go hang out there with friends, because of course it's a bar now, which is haunted, by the way. So much shock. And but yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's like almost like living history, because our lives overlapped. But I'm just really fascinated with her.
Yes.
Did she I'm trying to remember, because I remember studying her in high school, and then she's come across my radar here and there. I went to Bellhaven, so her house is right across the street there. But didn't she write a short story that had Natchez as the setting? There's probably more than one. I can't seem like I remember as a teenager in English class reading that, and I don't even remember what it was about now, but I just remember being just, and I'm not an avid fiction reader or a reader in general, but just her words, the way I remember. Here's the thing, I don't remember the story, I remember the feeling I had when I read her story. I got what she was saying, I understood what she was saying, the between the lines, and I felt like I was being picked up from where I was in her words.
It was a really familiar vernacular, I mean, like, it's not like it was, I mean, just the dialect that was familiar, the way that was used. I was just looking up to see if I could find it, and there's a whole list of articles on the Natchez Trace and Eudora Welty's fiction. Apparently, like, she used Natchez and the Natchez Trace, quite a lot as a setting. But because a couple of things came to mind, but I'm not sure which one that you read. But I mean, I think that's what I like so much, is that she was so complex and amazing and intentional in the way that she wrote, and was recognized for it, and during her lifetime, which often doesn't happen, and during a time when when we're not necessarily at the forefront of writing, or a lot of things. And so I just felt like she feels accessible. Like, historically, she feels accessible in the same way that her work feels accessible and familiar and inspiring. So
I'm going to just mention, y'all, I just got this from a fictional show, so I don't even know if this is true, but one person that came to my mind was Margaret Thatcher, and I really don't know anything about her other than I knew she was a prime minister for the United Kingdom from 1979 to 1990, because I just Googled it. What impressed me, though, is I think she always went home and cooked dinner for her family. Even though she was a busy working woman, she still did domestic things that she wanted to do. And what is that Netflix show? The Crown. Yeah. And that was one of the things that they showed, So I sure hope that is true. But my husband said it was. So anyway.
Well, I like what you said. She wanted to.
Yes.
I caught that too.
She wanted to.
Because I feel like we you know, with the whole feminist movement, it's been easy to think, okay, because we're stepping into new roles that we have to give up the old ones. And no, damn, I want my cake and eat it too. And Heidi, I want it to be full of butter and flour and sugar and not joking. but we don't have, like, we can be strong and break down barriers, do new things, pave the way for others, and still do those simple things that we were told we were supposed to. Well, if we want to do them, we can still do them. And so yeah, I hope that's true too.
Yeah. When I social media stalk you, Heidi, sometimes I'll see you do things about that you're a kitchen witch or something. I think I'm going to, that might be what I am too.
And yeah, so that's for me, like, as far as historical women, I think I'm constantly on a search, and that person changes over time. Because for most of my life, the people who I modeled my life after, or I wished it was, they were all men because they had more freedom. I did not witness women having freedom probably till my mid-30s. And that was with social media that came along. And I would like start seeing other women living their lives counter to what I had been raised in. And I was like, oh, like, I like that they do that. And so I kind of started looking at, like, my yoga teacher. She never had children. She worked until she probably still teaches. She's probably in her 80s. So there've been, like, women who've come into my lives for seasons that I'm like, this little part of her life I love. I want to integrate this. And there's also a lot of women I look at and I'm just like, what she's doing, don't fall into that trap. I'm not going to do that. But for me right now, the biggest woman of influence is probably Clarissa Pinkola Estes, because she talks about that women are like wolves. They need to roam, they need to run free, but they come back to their pack. And that a lot of the stories she tells are about women who've, like, been completely destroyed and then they're built back up. And so there's not this perfect woman. There's not this perfect way. Like, we are chaos. Like, we give birth, we destroy, we get, like, there's this whole creation cycle. And so with that, I like to, because I'm not gonna lie, there are times when I get in the kitchen and I can become burnt out and I can be resentful. And, like, people expect this of me. And that is always my clue to check in and ask myself, where am I overgiving and where am I not being wild? Like, I'm not honoring part of my deep core self that either needs to speak its truth, that needs to take a vacation by herself. Because when I'm in my power, like, my kitchen is the greatest source of revolution and rebellion. So when I look at it that way, as like, yes, my stock pot is my cauldron. And my daughter, she was so funny the other day. She was like, hey, she was telling me about a pot she had. And she was like, you know, my roommate, she has this spoon. She's like, it's our spoon. And she goes, and I know you remember it. She's like, it's kind of flat and it's got this wood handle. And she goes, and I can see you in the kitchen with it. But she took it with her when she moved. I was like, oh yes. I was like, that was one of my favorite wands. And she started laughing. She was like, yes, I see you in the kitchen as a witch. But that is my thing. I'm like, that's love potions. When I made fudge last week, that was all about love right there. So that's my thing. It's like the kitchen. I think the feminist movement had its place in a while of like empowering and freeing women to go into the workplace. And it had that. But when we get to the point we actually demonize and fall out of love with the role we have in the house, like, number one, I believe everybody belongs in the kitchen, not just women, not just men.
Right.
I think kids belong there. Everybody belongs in the kitchen. Because that's where freedom starts. Freedom starts in the kitchen. And
there's a title of it. Okay, Heidi, there's a title of a book for you. I'm writing it down.
Okay, I
Freedom
appreciate that.
in the kitchen.
Yeah. So that's just kind of my thing. It's
Put me
like,
in your acknowledgements.
okay, I can do that. So, but that's really just my thing is like when you have to connect with that kitchen or these mundane, I don't remember who it says, there's a book, but he's like, the majority of your life will be mundane. And because of social media, we expect not all of life to be mundane, but when we fall in love with the mundane, or when we take mundane and elevate it, that's when a ritual happens. That's when it becomes a spiritual experience. And the kitchen can be the place of that. I hand wash all of our dishes. Mark does too. I'm not the only one who washes dishes, but that is my moment to like check in. Like, I have eaten a lot of food today. I have dirtied all these dishes so many times, but it's that moment to look into my neighborhood, watch the people walk by. It's a moment to be present, not on my phone. But you have to intentionally be there in that moment. So whether you're cooking, whether you're cleaning, whether I have new butcher block counters, I love wiping them down. You have to be intentional, like to go in there on a regular basis. But that's my thing. Like that's when I'm praying over my kitchen. That's when I'm thinking about all the people who are going to come through my doors and sit at that bar and talk to me while I cook and then eat my food.
Oh,
I want to share a thing. You talked about washing dishes. So a few years back, I can't remember exactly how long, but I think most of my kids were still at home, maybe one in college, high school, junior high school, maybe about to go to college. And our dishwasher was broke for like over a year, maybe 2 years. And, I started to say money was tight. Well, that's subjective. There were more important things I felt to spend whatever money we had on other things versus a dishwasher. I'll put it that way, because I don't want to set the tone that we were poor at the, well, we weren't poor, but things were tight. But there were other things that came before buying a new dishwasher. So for that 2 years, I had to hand wash dishes, and I still had kids at home, and I was still primarily, a homemaker. And I'm going to tell you though, that I feel like I did a lot of manifestation doing that, and don't even think I realized to what extent doing that had on where my family is now. It really did, thinking about the kids, what was going on in their life, the conversations that were had as I was washing dishes and they were doing homework or talking about what was going on. And I look back now on that and kind of laugh. It's like, yeah, that was spell work that whole time. I was. Yep. It was.
Yeah, and so that's kind of my thing. Like with Clarissa Estes, it's like we can make wildness look however we want. And for some of us, not everybody wants to be in the kitchen, and that's perfectly fine too. But like if there is something in your house that you feel like as a woman you should no longer be there if you're going to be a liberated woman, like how can you reframe that in your mind? How can you still be this wild, liberated woman while still honoring the things that at your core make you happy and make your family healthy? So
I really like how you were talking about, well, both of you were talking about being just like when you go walk and you're able to just let your mind go and just come up with creative times. I've had those hardships where the dryer was broken for a year and I hung clothes out, and how that got me outside. And even though it was hard during the winter when you'd go hang up, and take your jeans off and they'd be like frozen, boards and sheets, those are really I have better memories of those than, pulling clothes out of a dryer. And I was able to like see a bird or listen to smell the fresh air, and that if we take some of and sometimes I sew, and there is magic that happens when we're doing some of those domestic.
ingenuity is born out of complications and hardship. And I'm sure a lot of the women that we will discuss today, the great things they did were probably born from some kind of problem or situation or hardship that they had to overcome. So, I mean, I think it's through those things of the things not being perfect is where we find our perfection later, is through going through those imperfections. Yeah. So,
Well, and I think we have access to resources now, like social media and podcasts, because there is someone, obviously she's a influencer on social media, but she's in the fitness world, and like you look at her and it's she is very successful. But she, on one of her podcasts, because, you know, on social media, Instagram, you have like these limited frames that you can present. But on her podcast, she started talking, she was like, I don't cook. She's like, I don't cook. She was like, because if I cook, I don't have time to create and help these other women in this way. She was like, but I also have money and I can run to Whole Foods, get my salad. She utilizes these things to make cooking. And she goes, I also don't wash my clothes. And she goes, and don't look in my car.
right.
I can be good at two things. She's like, I am great in relationships, but I think she's like, I'm a great friend. And she goes, I'm a great entrepreneur. She goes, no one will ever be in a relationship with me because I cook or clean. She was like, I outsource those things so I can focus. So for me, like just watching her and having her admit, like how we do it, there's no right or wrong way. Like we just have to figure out what allows us to live our purpose.
Oh, that makes me feel better, because right now, y'all, my home right now is just the worst it's ever been. I just like, you know, I'm not saying I don't love domestic things, but I'm just in a season of my life right now. Nobody except for my little fur babies need me at home, which is great. But I almost feel guilty a little bit that I'm not taking care of things the way I used to take care of them. And I'm trying to give myself grace on that. So thank you for sharing that, because it'll get done eventually. But
I need to
not
learn
today or tomorrow.
I need to learn to outsource it though, because sometimes I just neglect it.
I'm neglecting it. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm about to start outsourcing things to my children to do, because they dirtied these dishes. These are their clothes. They are old enough. And I will say this though, my two older kids like do take care of a lot of stuff. Eliza is the youngest, and she's 11. And I always said I wasn't going to do like that the youngest child syndrome, where like they didn't have to do anything, but it's happened. She is this spoiled little baby. And so I was like, will you go load the dishwasher? Can you go clean up and she's like, oh, okay.
Like she's doing
So
just.
I will be outsourcing to an 11-year-old very soon.
Hadley, do you want to say anything?
I think that we live in a very interesting time where we see so many phenomenal women taking charge. You know, it's not just the Ruth Ginsburgs, it's people like Heidi, you know, who is making love with her fudge in her kitchen. And you have people who are owning being a woman and also being a successful entrepreneur. And I mean, we live in interesting times. I recently had the conversation, and I want to bring it up in with you ladies, is you know, when we were basically tribal, it was the women who were the healers. It was the women who were the matriarchs of the society. The men were out hunting and gathering. The men were out doing the things that were dangerous. They were, hunting bear, hunting boar. Something could go wrong very quickly, and the leader of the men could be gone. And people forget that it was the women who were the lifeline of these tribal units that we had. And I think we see that we're again in a society where that awareness of our ancestors is coming back, and we're owning that. But we see more, and I encourage any woman who has an interest in politics, get out there, become an alderman, put yourself out there, get voted for, make a difference, because too often women don't think that they're qualified. We're overqualified. I think I've read an article that said that most women don't apply for jobs unless they are 100%
Qualified.
yeah. And the fact is that men who are 50% qualified are applying for those same jobs and getting them.
And getting them, and then become our bosses.
Yep. And we live in that fear. And I recently have a friend. I'm trying to get her to move to Mississippi. She's a huge women's advocate. She's one of these people, and I told her this. I go, you could get me to march. You could get me to go with a sign down to the Capitol to stand with the sit. But there's not many people around in my world who do that. And I'm like, come to Mississippi, make changes for women. It's the time. It's a good time here for that. We need women who advocate for women here.
And there's so much work to be done here.
Yes, but I'm not going to talk about that.
No, I was going to say, sign me up.
That's my day job. So I'm gonna put that over here, and I'm gonna get back to the metaphysical aspect of it. But I think when we go back to the heart of who we and what we are, from the heart of the house, which is the kitchen, to the heart of society, which is the mothers, and I'm not a mother, so but I have fur babies. Does that count?
They totally can.
But I've been a caregiver in this aspect of me. I took care of my mother while she was on hospice until she passed away. And that was a big, that's a big change for someone. And while I might not be a mother, that was basically being a mother for my mother while she transitioned.
Definitely.
And there's just so much that women do that we take, I think people take for granted, that we're the ones who own those emotions. We're the one who comfort when people are crying. It's great that men are starting to own that too, but it's in our DNA. That's what we are from womb to womb. That's what we are. But
I agree. And I think that also, like someone said earlier, I'm sorry, did I just cut somebody off? I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think one thing that someone brought up earlier, Clarissa Pinkerton says, I'm rereading The Woman Who Run with Wolves right now. And it's fantastic. I think that sometimes, we talk about our nurturing spirit, and I think that a lot of people, associate that nurturing spirit with women just inherently. But we are also like fierce. We are so fierce. I think that we are capable of being as fierce as we are nurturing. I think that we're capable of being as destructive and intentional ways as we are creating and birthing and raising. I think that, when I think about the women that I know and the women in my family and my, generations past, I am constantly in awe of how powerful these women are. And if I were someone in power who, like a man, I would be terrified of feminine power in a way that you see some of that play out, a lot of that play out, not just in Mississippi, which you do see quite a lot of that in Mississippi, but just generally speaking in politics, in the office, even in relationships, the way that, it's almost like we've got to keep, women in this nurturing box so that they'll keep nurturing. And one of the things that we end up nurturing is like our partners. And I've had relationships where I've had to remind someone, I'm not your mother,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so there's that nurturing thing, and then there's the boundaries. There's this protective warrior spirit that we also have. And I think that we're so incredibly powerful and so incredibly complex that and we bring all of those things to our families, whether we have children or not, like our I pick on my siblings all the time. I have a brother and sister. I'm the oldest, can you tell? And so but I have a brother and a sister, and we pick on each other incessantly. My mother's birthday was this past week, and they were sending group texts to my mother with all of us in it, and everyone was trying to one up one another on how much we loved our mother more than these two creeps over here, and like these ungrateful people. And so that was just so much fun. But we really do give each other a hard time, and sometimes we are just not real nice to each other. But my gosh, if anybody comes for either of them, the other two of us are on it. My ex-husband says that one West girl is a handful and two West girl is an ass whooping. So he's talking about me and my sister. So that, I feel that way. I think that our families are units of power and not just a place of care and nurture and love, which I think are incredibly important. But I think that those are the first things that people go to when they're like, women are so caring. I will fuck you up. Let me tell you, I am. Yes, I am. Absolutely, I am. And in huge ways. But there's a flip. There's so much more. And I'm very comfortable in those places that are not necessarily lauded.
Well,
So I think there's
think that.
Yeah, go ahead, Hadley.
I was going to say, I think that's something that should be noted is that, and I'm gonna quote Eddie Murphy here. You remember, I think maybe it was his Delirious album where he had the famous quote of his mom saying, "I brought you into this world, Eddie, and I can take you out."
Yeah.
And that's the thing about women is we don't just create life, but we can destroy it. And that is something men, as wonderful, and I love me some men, but that is something that they just don't have. They don't have the ability, to bring life into the world.
They sure
they can assist, but they don't have that actual experience. So they don't know what it's like to nurture on the level that women do, that women own. And I think that's phenomenal. I think we live in a great time, and there's been so much of the patriarchy keeping women in line, so to speak, and we're seeing a big shift in that now. And I'm not going to say that we're seeing it politically because we don't want to talk about that, but we are seeing women claiming this is wrong. We're seeing women setting these social boundaries of you can't do that to me. And these young women, because I know like it's very different from when I was a youth to the women that we see today. They're like, no. And, where we were more like, well, I think this is wrong and it feels wrong, but, this happens. And that was and I'm going to say for me, I can't speak for y'all, but, bad stuff happened and we just dealt with it because that's what you did. And now these young girls, they're saying no. And they don't, no period. There's no excuses made. There's no nothing. It's no more. And that's a great time to be living. It's good to see. And I don't know about y'all, but it's exciting. It's exciting to see that women are putting the foot down now.
No, I had dinner with someone last night, and she's one of my new mentors in this community, and that's what I was telling her. I was like, this which we're all out of this, but the age group of mid-20s to late 30s women right now, I'm just like so excited for them, and I see the growth and the strength, and they're struggling, because we all struggle, but I have so much faith and hope in that age group, and younger too, but yeah, I feel it and see it, and I'm just so glad that we all get to be there cheering them on and helping them. And I wanted to say, I don't remember who was saying it, but talking about the strength of women, and there's a strength of a group or community of women. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes we can be each other's harshest critics, and I may not care what some man's saying about me, but if a woman says something negative about me, that hurts like no other hurt hurts. But you put us together on a common goal, working on something together, that there's magic in that. Like, there's magic in this little group here, Heidi's full moon circles. It's sisterhood, not to exclude men. I hope it's by the end of this conversation, we won't be like, women are better. No, I feel like I'm rambling.
It's International Women's Month, so that's what.
Yes.
we get to be all about women right now.
We can talk all about, yes.
We got how many more days?
Yeah.
We can talk all about women and not have to make any caveats for men. They've
Yes.
had the floor for a long time. So
yes, and we'll give it back to them in April.
Yeah, I don't know who said this, but I'm gonna quote my dad, because that's who I just remember him saying it. If mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
So they know.
Yeah.
But yeah. One thing I kind of wanted to touch on is how, especially those of us who are a little older, how our views of our roles have changed throughout our lives. Especially those of us who were like Heidi said, we were raised in a an environment that did not empower us, and didn't show us those examples of strength. And when I was growing up, a lot of us here were raised in very religious households, and I love my parents. My parents are incredible. There's a reason why my brother and sister and I try to one up each other, like, I love mom more than you love mom. I adore them. But like every generation, a lot of us aren't doing things the way that our parents did. My children are not going to do things the way that I did. But I also find that in between, I'm not doing things the way that I used to do them. And I'm constantly checking myself to be like, I don't want to be one of those old ladies who's like, well, that's not proper because what you're supposed to do, but like have some sort of antiquated view that I can't let go of. And so I'm constantly kind of recalibrating, like, oh, we don't do that anymore. Or, oh, we can say that, we can be this, we can. Sometimes I kind of have to remind myself that the things that the young people are doing, even though they were so counter to something that was so ingrained in me, that even though I'm not doing it now, there's still this knee-jerk reaction, like, what are you? Oh, no, wait, we're good. The way that dating has changed blows my mind. And I have a 21-year-old And so she tells me all about what's going on with her friends and family. And I don't say it out loud, but in the back of my head, I just think, wow, like these are some empowered kids, because there's no way we would have been able to do these things and not get away with it, but embrace it and own it the way that this generation is. And so when you were talking about, these women who are, between 20 and 30, the struggles that they're having, oh my gosh, do y'all remember 20 and 30? I would not go back there. But the struggles, there's such similar struggles. We're still fighting some of the same fights, but there's been so much that's happened in the meantime. I am so proud. But I really do kind of have to think about, I've been raised in a conservative Christian family. I was a stay-at-home mother for quite some time in a relationship that sort of put me there. Now I loved that time with my family, with my children, but it was not an empowered position for me. And then when I was able to get back into the workplace, the first thing I did was like, well, I've got a lot of catching up to do because I've been out of the workplace for so long. Let me prove myself. And what I ended up doing was shifting so much of my focus towards work. And I was single for a lot of that time, that I didn't feel as connected to my family. So I find myself, and now I've got like how many side gigs? I don't even want to know. I don't even count them. There's too many, and I still have I have an 11-year-old at home. I have, my oldest is on the autism spectrum. She's at home. She's amazing and helps out and does a lot of great stuff, but she'll probably always be at home. I don't view her as one of my children, I'm not raising her still, but she's home. And then my 21-year-old is like, wants to move out so bad, like you could almost see her vibrating, like she just wants to shoot out of the house. But but they're all three still home. And of course, I'm married. My husband's name is Mike and he's incredible, but I still have my family's still at home. So there's this constant battle between who I think I'm supposed to be based on all of these changing social norms and who I fought against being in some sense when I was able to go back into, the workplace, and then balancing that. And I just want to know, like, is that something that you all experience as well? How do you deal with that?
So for me, it's a constant checking in because, like, again, I was homeschooled, like raised in a like strictly religious house to the point almost I would consider it cult-esque. And so the first thing I did was revolt from that when I left home. But I was also always caught in this paradigm of you cannot make more money than your husband. Mm-hmm. And so that ruled a lot of the life. And in my second marriage, like I wanted it to work so bad. Like I bought books like Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands. I had a library of books and I followed them to a T. And I remember one day we were at a birthday party and my dad asked me what was going on. I was like, oh, I did all this morning. And he looked at me and he was like, you turned into a really great housewife. Which, I mean, I had a job, but he was like, you really turned out okay. And I remember sitting there and tears just start coming down my face because my marriage was falling apart. Like, no matter how great I was at home and I did all these things that I've been raised and read, like it was still decaying around me. And so that now in this other relationship, we're not married. And he's like, girl, if you want to make more money, he's like, you can make triple the money I make. I don't care. He's like, I'm gonna cheer you on. And so for me, it's been this very vulnerable place because then I'm like, you mean I can work and like I can actually see the fruit of this and I don't have to like self-sabotage it? And he's like, no, like let me see it, let me cheer you on. So then I like want to fall into that place of like work. And it is easy to become out of balance, but I can tell when I am out of balance because then I'm angry and resentful out the things in the house. And then when I'm in the house, I'm like, am I falling back into these old habits of like, if I'm the perfect housewife, this relationship will work? So it's this constant narrative that I'm like, who is this? What story is motivating this? And then just really, I have a journal right now. Somebody gifted it to me. It's called Shiitake Happens. Because it was actually at a retreat I hosted, and we talked about compost, and they did not know the topic was compost of our lives, the things that need to rot and die away and become fertilizer. They gave me that. So journaling really helps to get down to like, what are my motives for like being buried in work? What are my motives for stepping back from work and being in love with the kitchen, or with being in love with being in the yard? I don't think it's ever going to be a perfect balance. Like, I think it's always going to be rewriting a narrative that someone else wrote for us at some point.
I think you just nailed it, because I'm just realizing that when I feel out of balance, it's whenever I am trying to fulfill an expectation that it's not my own expectation.
Yes.
It's someone else's. Like when I'm working so hard and I'm trying to be this person that I don't really think it's the person I think I'm supposed to be. It's a narrative that I'm trying to embody. That's not my narrative. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm trying to be everything I'm supposed to be at home, it's, you know, everything should be motivated by love. Okay. In a perfect world, that's what we would be doing all of the time, every day, you know, but when I get out of sync with that, like I still have to pay bills. I have a job that I love. I'm a wholesale wine buyer, and that's what pays my bills. That and my husband. And but like I have all these side gigs because I want to be able to contribute in all of these different ways, because that's fulfilling to me. I want to be able to go home and have a clean home and take care of my family, because they mean so much to me. But there's like this much of me and this much that needs to be done. And so it is sort of a constant like recalibration. What needs my attention right now, and also not forgetting to take care of ourselves in that whole process. I am really good at forgetting that part, and it's hard to be a powerful badass when you haven't had lunch, and or breakfast, and coffee doesn't count as water. It's not hydration, and so yes, I know, but so you know, I really like what you said there about the narrative and other people's expectations. That's sort of a light bulb for me. So thank you.
Well, I like to try to just not sleep. I mean, I like to sleep, but I'm just saying, sometimes I procrastinate on the things that I don't want to do. Like, I work from home and I do another job where I'm a contract worker. So I put it off to the last minute, and then it's 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, I really got to do this. So then I stay up to, 3 a.m. to get it done. And this is a vicious cycle again. So then I, sleep for 4 hours and then wake up and try to start it over again the next day, but yeah, I am not stopping to rest like I should too, in my trying to get it all done. There's so much guilt wrapped around that of, like the wanting to cat nap, sit in the recliner and rest.
And she literally cat naps because she'll have cats all over her.
Yeah. But that there's still I'm in workaholic mode at the moment. And yesterday I took the day off. Literally took the day off, and I work from home, so I stayed out of a room, stayed out of the office. I had to do that. And I had my vision of what my future was when I was younger was, told to me by what I was modeled. My mother, you take care of your You know, my goal was to marry a minister in our church.
That was
Go
our
to our-
highest.
Yeah, go to our church college and be a minister's wife and a homemaker. I mean, that would be like, oh, you know, I have made it. Well, you know, that all didn't really happen. But when I met my husband and he asked me to marry him, I'm like, the only thing I ask you is I'm going to stay home and take care of my child. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And so that happened, but, you know, kind of, it kind of happened, but, you know, I ended up having to work, but I worked from home, you know, and that thing of women who we're stay-at-home moms, but we still have a job, you know, you can't ever like, there's no escaping, there's no, I mean, I've got a job that when I'm not tending to things in the house, I can't just go and rest because I have a job. So you know, so you feel pulled when you work, when your office is at home, inside your home, you know. So
I did that too for a long time.
yeah, so that's one thing that now we are struggling with. I think the modern woman is trying to have it all. Her you know, like, oh, I'm accomplished. I do not put my children in daycare. I'm not saying anybody who puts their children in daycare is
Yeah,
bad.
but for example,
That is just what my goal was, you know. I'm gonna be at home with my children. But then, you know, we also have to earn a living too while we're home with our children.
Well,
I read an article a long time ago about I used to y'all, I don't think I've ever told y'all this. I used to have a column and it was called Miss Biz, and it was like Mississippi business, like women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But it was very, like, I cringe so much if I go back and read those. I don't like to read anything after it's gone into print because to me, like it's dead to me. Like I wrote it, it's out there in the world, and I try not to read it because it just, but these especially make me cringe. But one of the things that I wrote about that I was so proud of that I got a lot of flack for because it was such a huge departure was, yes, you can have it all, but probably not all at the same time. And how like there's like our lives have seasons, like, you know, you're in workaholic mode right now. That may be the season that you're in right now. And so that means that it's not that you just let some things go, although maybe, but they just sort of like fall a little further down on the priority list. Everything can't be equally important.
Yeah.
All of the time. Like you're gonna kill yourself if you try to do that. But and I remember because it was a very conservative column at the time, y'all. The flack I got for that. And now I think about it and I'm pretty proud of it. I'm like, man, like I really did go in there and write that. But just being able to say, like, if this is what makes you feel empowered, these are the things you should be doing. If these are the things that can, but that does not mean that you have to do these things plus this long list of things that everyone else is expecting you to do. So and so some people were accusing me of telling women that they didn't have to take care of their families, and I'm like, where did you see that in this column? And but there was, you know, I just remember being just so daggone proud of that column and scared kind of when I wrote it, thinking what's gonna happen. But that was one of the things, and I stand by that. And it was one of the things that just sort of, I was in the process of trying to find my happiness in a marriage that was not happy, and find my place of power in a marriage that did not empower me at all. And one of the things that I was doing was I ended up homeschooling. And I always joke that I was like the reluctant homeschooler. Now, I enjoyed it. I loved it. But since I wasn't really kind of allowed to have a career, I made that my career, and I created a homeschool network that ended up being in 4 different states, and like we were all connected to one another, and it was all online, and it was kind of revolutionary for the time that we were doing it. Yeah, and so and he kind of hated it, and would talk about the people in my group and in very disparaging ways, and like, you should be taking care of your family. And I'm like, I am taking care of my family. Look at all these people that are here to support us. Look at this network of people, of resources. Look at how I didn't know how to do this, but so-and-so knew how to do it. And so now I know how to do it. And now we can do it in this home.
Mhm.
And so just finding those places of empowerment and being able to prioritize without sacrificing yourself,
Mhm.
and without I mean, there's a difference between feeling guilty and actually being neglectful. You know, and a lot of times I think we are so hard on ourselves. We're like, oh, I'm just neglecting such. Are you? Or is it just like not at the top of your list right now? And if it's not, it's okay. You'll get to it. But there are seasons, there are times and you know, like Heidi said, like constantly, you know, checking in with ourselves with those narratives. I feel like that's something that I will be doing for the rest of my life. I don't think we ever arrive. I hope that's not your goal. You won't get there.
Yeah. And for me, I look at wherever, like I said, narratives other people wrote for us or that we bought into, that narrative of thinking you have to have a clean house, I make all these meals, I earn a living, I support my family, I can make all the soccer games, I can do all this. And then when I lay down, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do this. That is society's way, or the patriarchy, whatever label you want to put on it, of keeping.
And you got to be a badass in the bed too.
And you got to, oh yeah, because have energy for that.
Oh yeah.
Like, so, but
can
that
clean
is
the
the way,
kitchen.
if we keep women so exhausted, you don't have time for connection, you don't have time for community, you don't have time to thrive. And that is the easiest way to keep someone in submission. And so the greatest revolution for us is to give ourselves permission in certain areas of our lives to take things off of our plate. Like, this is the life I'm intentionally creating. This, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm not saying this from a place of like, I have this nailed, because the other day, Mark, he always checks in really with me a lot and I love it. He was like, are you happy? And I was like, oh, I'm so happy, baby. And he was like, how could you be happier? And I was like, if I had more hours in my day. And he just looked at me and he goes, or perhaps a few less things on your plate. And I was like, but so again, like, I am in a season, like I have nourishing practices. I am full-time in school, about to start a social work internship. There are things that are not perfect. Like yesterday, we've been in this house since January, and I was like, look at the construction dust on that wall. And I was like, I have 5 minutes, I'm gonna wipe this down. I have given myself permission. This house will not be cleaned until November of this year. Like, that's when it's gonna happen.
That's a worthy goal.
Yeah. And like, even then I'm like, oh, well, I mean, if nourishing practices does really good, I might hire someone to come in and do it before then. Like, I am okay with that.
So, but my 11-year-old over.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to also having, like, girls go shopping together. We have wine parties. Why can we not wine and clean house with each other at the same time?
I will bring wine and dust cloths.
Yeah. Like, let's just knock it out. Let's have a party and knock it out.
Work parties. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's my thing, is like, when we're looking at this coming from this life from a place of exhaustion, like, we get to ask why. Like, why are we buying into that narrative? And it will be something we do till the day we die, because society puts so many things on us, and we allow that to be put there. And now I'm rambling. I have no idea where I was going with that.
Yeah.
No,
I want to
I love
circle
it.
back to Hadley, because I think she's like with a lot of us. Hadley, you work from home primarily, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, Emily, you were kind of touching on this, and this is kind of something that I don't want to say struggled with, but has been a part of my journey, is that even if I love my home and love being at home, my home is work. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and you know, this might be going off topic, but that's what we do. We have a topic and then we just go where it goes. And Hadley, because I know you've got a lot of balls in the air right now too. Are you able to turn off and relax at home when? Because yesterday I was kind of supposed to take the day off too, and I didn't come into the office, so that was a big deal for me not to come to the office. But I was still kept getting pulled back to my desk at home, you know, texting people, and you know, we've got our phones with us all the time, and so we're always in work mode. How do you disconnect and enjoy being at home?
Well, home is my sanctuary. So that's the way I've worked. I've telecommuted since like 2011. So it's not new to me. And I will say that shifting from because I work contracts, and when my contract ended in 2020, I was able to stop and primarily take care of my mom and focus. That was when she was declining. But I also wrote 2 books during that time period because I've got to have so much going on that it just kind of takes a spot. And basically I had told my friend that if I ever stop, I probably won't start back. And I was forced to stop. A contract I was working for in April and March, or April and May of last year, their funds ran out. So they stopped paying me. And then they were wanting me just to volunteer my time. And I was like, well, I can't do that. I need to get paid. So I basically just folded in on myself and just took a break. And I was still writing. I focused on the podcast. And now I'm back in the office, and I've got strict lines for myself. I'm only working, you know, I'm not rolling out of bed and going to work and working until midnight, because that's what I was doing. And whether it was doing stuff for my, you know, employer or for myself, I just had no downtime. And so now I'm really trying to make sure that, you know, I only work 40 to 45 hours a week for my paying job. And that, you know, I take a couple of, and I'm still trying to negotiate how this is going to shake out. But because the book launch was a thing, and I haven't really planned that out. But, you know, I've had more time for that, and still there's interviews and things like that going on. And it's just, you know, it's a big mix of the podcasting is also like my social stuff too. Somebody was like, well, you don't ever, what do you do for fun? Where do you go? And it's like, I don't want to go anywhere in Jackson anymore. I don't want to leave Franklin County. You know, Jackson is, you
Have
can't
I
drink
got the
water,
book for
you might
you?
get carjacked, you know, I just never might go. But so I'm looking for more fun things to do, more, you know, to shift that side, you know, for myself. But it's an active thing. But and I'm sure that anybody who has any type of like rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, that you get this when I say you only have so many spoons a day. And I'm trying to make sure that my spoons are, you know, that I'm not using more spoons than I have, because I've done that before. But I'm just trying to take it one day at a time and make sure that all my T's are crossed, I guess.
Oh, well, you just said something that indirectly made me realize something to give myself grace about. Because I'm so used to being in hurting all the time. I mean, I have physical pain. I forget. I'm just so used to it. And I think I forget that subconsciously I have to make choices not only on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis as to where I'm going to put my physical energy. Because, you know, if I spend a whole day of cleaning house, the next day I might be barely moving. I know that sounds dramatic, but because I have fibromyalgia and arthritis and all those things, and I just don't really think about them that much, and I just kind of cope. But I don't know where I'm going with that, but I
Well, that's
earlier
where
in
the
the
self-care
conversation-
comes in. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a friend that she used to tell me, you can't save the world if you can't get out of bed, you know, and that's the truth. When you're suffering, and there's, I mean, and I'm not trying to say that it's all in your head, because it's not, but there is a mind, body, spirit connection. And if we're not feeding one of those aspects regularly, then it's going to manifest in some sort of pain or in some way. And like I said, that's for me, 2023 was going to be all about getting back to me. And here I am, it's almost April, and I'm kind of doing better, but not a lot. But I just started a new job, and that was not something I was anticipating. And but I'm wanting to do the salt cave. So I'm like, I think I'll do that for myself. I'll just go at least once a week, and that'll be something I can do for me. And
Yeah, I'll go meet you up there. Because you know, back at the old location, that was, you know, here's the thing with pain. This is a whole other podcast, but I do have a relationship with my pain, because it on some level, it is my friend and partner. And I know that sounds weird, but it is what got me to where I am right now. It was my physical limitations that inspired me to go down this, take the next level of my spiritual path. And sometimes I wonder if I am actually holding on to the pain because I can hide behind, okay, I'm going on a totally other tangent. We should do a whole podcast about that.
That sounds like a breakthrough moment, though. I was going to say, don't interrupt that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
go on, Chris.
But actually, you know, it was my searching to heal myself that brought me down all these little roads, and I took little side paths and everything. I mean, I think the whole journey of healing is what all this is about. Anyway, that's what we as women do. I think y'all said it earlier. We are healers, and a lot of that healing starts with ourselves. But that's where we get distracted. We get so distracted with caring for the healing of others that we put ourself on the back burner. But I think I just totally took the
no, I will say this, that I've been told that I'm a healer, and one of the ways that I healed people, and this was years ago, I mean, this was, you know, when I was just getting into my own, is healing men that had, you know, this emotional stuff going on with them. And I was historically getting involved with men with certain patterns. And it was very unhealthy for me, and it burned me out to the point where, I mean, when I would say, I call him the 2010 to the 2015, when we finally split up, I did not want to date anymore, ever again. I was done, and just made plans to focus on me. And then when the time was right, I've met someone, and you know, things are great. But he's not like anybody that does not need me to heal him. He's a true partner. And that's what I saw, like, I was letting these people I was involved with use up my energy, and I wasn't getting replaced. Well, and I think we've talked about this when I've been in your office, was I developed these kidney stones, and I have staghorn kidney stones. They don't pass. They're too large to pass. And that's where I started developing these issues. So I exchanged these men for this physical issue that I'm having. And one of my mentors is a healer, and she said to me, have you looked at the metaphysical aspect of like what's going on with your kidney stones? And it's a sacral chakra problem. And that is all wrapped up in what's going on with me that I was having with these men. And so now I'm looking at my healing journey totally different as to what can I do to make my sacral chakra heal, to heal it, instead of just focusing on the Western medicine ways of combating this. And that's, again, this is my 2023 journey. It's all about getting healthy. So I'm going to hopefully have a happy orange glow to me the next time y'all see me.
Yes.
Yeah, Hadley, I get that, because not everybody in the world knows this, but I lost my dad. He was 59 and he had been diabetic since he was 30, workaholic. Like he could have worked many, many more years had he just taken care of himself. There's a story there. But I struggle managing my blood sugar, and like I view this constant, because it is almost a radical way of living I have to live in order to keep it normal. But I view it as healing generational lines of diabetics. Because I look back at my dad, my grandfather was also diabetic, my grandmother was diabetic. So I look at that as like the buck stops here. Like this is where it stops in my family lineage. And I'm going to do the work to make that happen. But kind of like Krista, like you, like it's like you face it every day. And it's one of those, I think we can use it as a distraction, or we can use it as a tool to set examples for younger women that are coming.
Can I just make this observation? This is what happens when women get together. Is we have these moments of pure connection and pure awareness of how we can heal not just ourselves, but one another. And I'm so thrilled to be part of this circle. And I cannot tell you enough how much it means to me to be here with y'all. So thank you, Krista and Emily. I really appreciate y'all inviting me.
You're welcome.
This has turned out beautiful, because I'm like, I didn't have my shit together today. It's beautiful. Sorry.
And I think it's important, and we're modeling this. Other people have modeled it for us, and we're modeling it too. We're carrying it forward. That it's okay to be vulnerable when you can find a safe place to be vulnerable and share your feelings. Be open to feedback, sometimes criticism, but you can take it, thank it, and let go of what you don't need at the moment, or file it away for later. But it's just so important, I feel, for us to model how to create safe places for people, whether it's a physical place or a virtual place. And that it's okay. There is strength in vulnerability. Being vulnerable doesn't have to be a weakness. That there can be strength to it. I think to have the courage to be vulnerable is a very brave thing to do. But in order to do that, you need to feel like you're in a safe place to do that. And thank y'all for showing up to be a part of a safe place to do that.
Thank you for creating
It's-
such a
it's
safe
beautiful.
space. It feels, for the longest time, like vulnerability was viewed as a weakness for me, and now I see it as like a superpower. And this community has helped me embrace that in new ways all the time, and I'm so grateful. So grateful.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, I second what Hadley said. Me too, girl.
Second that emotion. So Emma, do we want to try to talk about other famous women, or just let this conversation be what it was?
Are y'all fine with, is there anything?
Do y'all have anything y'all wanted to share that you?
I want to know who Hadley's historic person is.
Yes.
We had this same conversation, like, what was it, last weekend? So I used them all up, but I was going to use Ruth Ginsburg. That was mine for today. Because she's phenomenal and everybody needs to know who she is.
Yes, definitely.
Well, let me say this to y'all is,
Please.
and I know that y'all are flying by the seat of your pants today, but sometimes those organic conversations are the most important. And I think this was a phenomenal conversation. I really did.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
So way to go, Emily. Way to go.
You're welcome.
You did have your shit together. You just didn't know it.
Round of applause.
Okay, so so this conversation didn't go the way I planned, but just as Hadley said, it went where it needed to go. So
Yes.
thank y'all.
Yeah. Thank y'all, ladies,
Yes.
for coming on Sunday morning and
Yes.
having the virtual cup of coffee with us on the front porch.
All right. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent.